I was a BSIS grad in 2015. And then I jumped straight into working with GE. So I've been with this company, been here for the last 5 years. I currently work in, I guess, cybersecurity now as of April. And so, I've seen a lot of different angles of working in IT at a big company now. And I've also been, I guess, helpful in recruiting in the Carolinas for the last couple of years. There aren't too many IT folks that sit in North and South Carolina, so I've kind of tackled most of the schools. But of course, since I am a UNC grad, I care a lot more about making sure I approach campus as many times as I can for you all. But I guess if you're a junior or a senior, you've probably seen me before. I typically am the person that you'll see at career fairs. I also have done interviews for interns for the last few years as well, and for some full-time opportunities. So I've seen both sides of things, because I once was the person at the career fair, and then I've stood at the career fair, and then I've interviewed people after. Heck, I had an intern at one point last summer. So if you've got any questions, I'm an open book, and I'm happy to help.
Great. Well, one of the things that we always try to spend September getting students ready to the onslaught that is the start of the recruiting season. And so some of that is their documentation, like their resumes or LinkedIn profiles. Some of that is in their verbal conversation and their elevator pitch, or what questions they might ask. This year we have an added component of it being virtual. So University Career Services is using the platform Career Echo, and I have been on it briefly, and it's a lot of chat featuring, and so you can also request to do a one-on-one video. And so I think a lot of our students are uniquely qualified to do whatever they want to do, but sharing that is the hard part, and kind of figuring out how to condense into maybe 3 or 4 or 5 sentences what they can offer people is sometimes a struggle. And live, some of that can be absorbed through, oh, it's loud, I'm not standing at the right spot, did you hear what I said? But virtual, it's going to be much more direct, two-dimensional, but much more direct. And so I wanted to see what you would want as a recruiter to hear from students in that space.
Absolutely. So I guess I took some notes, and I kind of broke it up into pretty much 4 sections. The first of which is kind of your presentation of yourself and your atmosphere, which honestly you all have probably perfected after having online classes all year. The benefit of this year being virtual is it is new for everybody. Employers are scrambling and doing trainings and teaching each other how to do this. And then you all have been doing this for classes already, whereas we're just used to our meetings internally. Like, I wear this to my meetings internally, I don't dress up. I half the time I put on half the makeup and just, I go. But setting your atmosphere is probably the first thing, because not only will it make sure you're comfortable on camera and in that presentation setting, but it's also going to be a chaotic event, whether it's on a one-on-one meeting or whether it's a group chat, just because of how many people you're going to talk to and how many people your recruiters are going to talk to. So making sure that they can see your face, making sure that they don't remember you for something bad, like, oh no, that was the kid that picked his nose on camera. Like, common sense, but setting up your atmosphere so that it's not distracting. So you're not the, the person who had something going on behind them, but you're the person that was on the camera and was able to explain your interests, or you're the one that was excited about this topic over here. We want your personality to come through more than what you're handling. So my notes there were, of course, use camera when you can. I understand if for whatever reason, like the bandwidth isn't great, showing that you tried to use camera is a good thing. So try it. And then if you find out, oh, it's not great, let me turn off the camera, whatever, go for it. The second thing there is make sure your background's clean. I know that you all have the ability with Zoom to do the cool backgrounds, which is awesome. We use Teams internally and they're not quite as cool, but it seems like you probably have that figured out. I actually had to play a trick here because we just moved into our house, and this is our storage room / my office right now. So I strategically have the camera positioned this way, even though the light is hitting me on the side of the face. You can't see boxes over here. So knowing that you don't have anything crazy going on. The other piece of that is minimizing noises, because I know that you might be one of a few people in your house doing video calls right now. Just making sure you have a space that's uniquely your own. That way you don't have like your dog running around. My cat's been out in my hallway meowing all morning. Like I just have to, close her outside. And then the other thing is lighting. So as you said, I mentioned that the lighting is weird. You can see that it's on the side of my face. I've been on so many calls, especially with work people, where their light is behind them, which means I don't see their face at all. They're just like a blob here and you just see the light. So you probably have a little bit of experience with this already from your Zoom calls, but make sure the light is facing you in some way, whether it's to the side like mine is, or it's in front of you. That way we can see you, because at a career fair in general, it is so overwhelming as an employer. Unless you have a small army of people with you in your company helping to funnel in all these people, we talk to people for 5 minutes, maybe. And in these events, I think it's like 10 minutes for some breakout sessions, depending upon the school. We want to remember you, and whether that's your face or something you said, or I don't know, the way you put yourself together for this, those are all good qualities, and we don't want to lose any of that just because of atmosphere getting in the way. So that was the first thing I kind of have written out, is just don't do anything too distracting. And then of course, the second thing, which Laura, you hit on, is your introduction, your elevator pitch. So whenever someone walks up to me at a career fair, you get the opportunity to shake their hand. We don't get to do that anymore. We don't know how confident you are in what you're saying. We don't know, like, the eye contact thing is hard because you have to look in a camera. And even then you see me, like, I'm bouncing all over the screen here. And that it's hard to do some of those things virtually, and employers know that. So we're depending a lot on what you say. So typically it's tell them what your name is and make sure that you get their name back whenever they introduce themselves. Definitely say what your interests are, or first, I guess, say what you're looking for. So are you looking for an internship or a full-time position? Get that out right away, because so many times the employer, the recruiter, they've got 4 different opportunities in their head and they're trying to figure out where to slot you. So if in the first 30 seconds, they know your name, they know maybe your major, they know what year you are, what you're looking for, that's awesome. And then from there, I would say throw in your interests. Because for some people, we know, hey, you're a generalist. You could be thrown in wherever. You'd probably do great. You'd be an awesome project manager. We could just toss you in. Your skills are universal. But if you're really interested in something, we don't want to funnel you into security if you really love data analytics, or vice versa. We want to make sure that we're slotting you off properly in the roles that we have in our head whenever you walk up to us, because that's just more fair to you. And the only way we're going to know what you like and what you're good at and what you studied is if you tell us. So write it in, make it a sentence. It can be longer than that if you're just really passionate about something, or if it's something you've done before. Whatever works best for you. We know it's individual, but that's kind of the big thing there, is your elevator pitch. I would also say have your resume ready. I'm not sure how UNC's career fair is handling it, but every school's so different, so I'm just going general here.
I think they're going to pull from Handshake. So I think they're going to say what, but it'd be good to check with Career Echo if you have to upload it a second time.
Yeah, know how that works early. I would say your LinkedIn is going to be the easiest way for an employer to catch who you are really fast. So have that link ready too. And whether it's you go on Google and make it a short link, I don't know, be fancy with it. You're in IT for the most part. You'll figure it out, a cool way to make it easy for the employer to find you. But the thing is, we are not going to have that piece of paper. Just like we don't get to shake your hand. We don't know if that piece of paper is formatted pretty. We don't know if you're using quality paper. We don't know if it came in bent or not. Like, none of those things matter this year. It's all about, can we access your information quickly if we need to remember who you are? Because as I mentioned, remembering who people are is one of the hardest things when you've seen 300 people, give or take, in a day. And then if you think about the fact that there are recruiters like me that go to multiple schools in a week for recruiting times, we're all over the place. So having something for them to know who you are quickly, or remember you, or bookmark you, or something would be helpful. And I'm hoping that the Echo tool helps with that, but I'm having to kind of wing it every school I go to be honest. Let's see. The other things I mentioned, just like little things, looking at the camera, as I mentioned, it's a weird one because some people care and some people don't. Like, I don't really care. I think you could be looking wherever as long as you're focused and I can see that you're not texting. But I know I've had recruiters, even at my company, that are like, oh, they didn't look in the camera. They weren't talking. Some people are nitpicky, so I'm going to throw it out there. Not everybody cares though, but that's a good tip if you're ever wanting to really make your introduction. Look at the camera, not at yourself or at their face. I don't know why it's so different, but it just varies a little bit. Let me see. I would say for the third big thing, and I know I'm talking a lot and we'll jump into questions. The third big thing is I would have a notebook ready, showing that you're taking notes and that you care enough to learn more and jot down a few things just shows that you're interested. I don't know how many times I've been to an in-person career fair and I've seen somebody like stare past me somehow while they're nodding. And I'm like, you don't care. Can you move out of the way so somebody who does care can come in and talk to me? Make sure you're interested in who you're talking to. But also, if you're in that moment with somebody, be there, be present, be taking notes, care about what they're saying because, and this sounds so awful, but like if you're in that spot, that means somebody else isn't getting that time with them. So make sure it's worth everyone's time. And even if that means after hearing a little bit more about the company, kind of pausing and saying, okay, well, that was really helpful. I don't know if this is what I'm looking for, but I really appreciate you talking to me. That's respectful too. And that just means they now get the chance to go back and grab somebody else, which means a different opportunity could come in for the company. So it saves time. We do that on business calls all the time where we say, you know what, I don't know if this is relevant to my application. I don't know if this is relevant to the project I'm working on. And we say, okay, well, thank you for your time. We'll resume after, maybe we'll have an email or something. And then the other thing, the last kind of bullet I had is just afterwards, send a thank you. Write down their name, get their email through the tool, send a thank you note because this is almost as good as a cover letter because you get a chance to reintroduce yourself, retell your story in that thank you note. And this is just strategic. You could have the same blurb about yourself ready to drop in any letter. I would leave like 2 sentences for, it was great talking to you. We talked about XYZ in some form or fashion, or I enjoyed talking about XYZ, but always have that blurb ready to give them about yourself so that instead of me having to be like, oh, who was Jill? Let me go find Jill's resume. Crap, what was her last name? It started with a B. I'm not sure. And you kind of bounce through people until you find Jill. And by that time you're like, what was I doing? What was I looking for her for? So having that extra way to introduce yourself would really, really help. And honestly, I think it would make you stand out because not everyone's going to do that. So that was all the notes I had, but of course I'm an open book and there's plenty that I didn't think about.
Those are all very good points, Brittney. I love how you mentioned afterwards because that was my next question I was going to ask. We spend a lot of energy on the preparing and the doing, and then there is equal energy that should be spent afterwards. So can you give us some insight on what you might have done during your job search season and what worked best in addition to the thank you note, just in terms of follow-up, like a lot of students will ask me, am I being annoying? How long should I wait? Like what do you see from candidates?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that you should typically hear, especially if it's an interview, or actually I guess in the setting, typically the employer knows their timeline in some way. Every now and then crazy things happen like COVID and their timeline goes crazy when you're in the middle of a process. We did actually have that happen where people were interviewing for fall positions this spring and then COVID hit. And we pretty much had to say, we have to pause this, I'm so sorry, because it's out of our control. That's HR's decision. But for the most part in these events, employers know what their numbers are. They know how many people they're hiring. They know what they're looking for. Are they going to tell you that? No, don't ask them that. But they know so that they're going into your event with like, I need 3 people. We're going to look for, a few solid resumes, narrow that down. But they're not going to announce their numbers to you. But they also know their timeline. They know, okay, if I don't have people in from this school by this date, all the spots will be filled from other schools. So they have a rough timeline in their head. And typically, if you ask them, hey, what does the timeline look like for this? They'll usually tell you, unless it's something where they say it's rolling. And what rolling means is it's an opportunity that is just going to sit open until they find the right candidate. Or they will get new opportunities every few months or every month or whatever that schedule is for that place. And so if they say, hey, our opportunities are rolling, that means you bookmark their website and you refresh it once a month. If you really love that company, you really want that position, you really want to eventually work in a your dream role at that place, you just go to their website every month, look for opportunities either in your area or in the US. Many of them are remote right now, so you can get away with any US opportunity for a lot of companies from your house in the current climate, I'll say. I don't know how long that'll last, but employers know. So then the other piece of that is in an interview process or when you're waiting for something to come back to you. Typically, and this varies by company, because some companies have automated systems that will trigger an auto email after so many days or months that say, hey, we're sorry, it's just not a good time right now for you, but we'll have you come back. None of those ever mean you're a bad candidate. They just mean we're full. You know, timing didn't work out this time. It's not a personal attack. It just means we had maybe 75 applications in 2 spots. So you always have to think about it, because these, like my company, we are 300,000 employees globally. Like that's a lot of people. That's a lot of job opportunities, but like that's also a global presence. So did we hire somebody in Europe? Did we hire somebody in India? Did we hire somebody in China, in the US for that same position? It could happen anywhere. So it's not a personal thing if you do get one of those emails. Not every company will send those. Sometimes they just leave the resume pool open, and then after a while it feels stale and they just kind of forget to send an email. Typically though, if you're a good candidate for a company, somebody's going to reach out to you. They're going to say, oh my goodness, this person's exactly what we're looking for. Let's set up a first round interview. I know lately, and I think GE's doing this now, but typically they do like a first round screening. That's like I think it's Higher View, where you go and you like record yourself answering questions. I don't know if you all have had experience with those type of interviews yet. It was before I joined, or sorry, it was after I joined that they started doing this. So I never went through it myself. I just know I've heard experiences from those that have joined after me. But you essentially record yourself. You get like a minute to answer a question. If you don't like your answer, you can like undo and re-record it. It's very funny. I know in the past we've had some like coding challenges that were online. I don't even know if we do those anymore. But after you get through that first kind of round, then you'll start getting into live interviews, which would be like this. You would be sitting on a call with somebody like me, or maybe it would be a panel with a couple of people from the company. Of course, they're all going to be at their house right now, so it would be a couple different screens talking to you. And you'll get asked behavioral questions usually. And then at that point, at the end of that interview, whether it goes well or not, so here's an HR trick, whether it goes well or not, they're still going to give you a timeline. They're going to say, hey, we will respond to you in maybe 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, maybe this step takes a month. I know it varies drastically by company, but that's a fair question every time to say, well, what are the next steps? What's the timeline from this point forward? And if someone's interviewing you and they don't know, and you don't get an email like right away after the meeting with the answer, send a follow-up. Once again, always use the excuse to send a thank you, to say, hi, I enjoyed talking with you. It was great to learn about XYZ. I really like X elements of the company, or the position or whatever. And what did you say like the timeline was? Or do you have a chance to figure out what the timeline was? Like you can ask it in so many ways, but using your follow-up email as an excuse to get that, helpful. And then they've got an email that's going to keep reminding them whenever it dings on their computer that they haven't replied to an email. The other thing is, if somebody says, hey, in 2 weeks you should be hearing back from us, and it's been 2.5 weeks, send them an email. That's on them at that point. That's on the employer because they said 2 weeks, which means it's not disrespectful for you to reply. I've had some disrespectful emails come in where they were like, hi, you said you'd be back to me. Why haven't you? And then of course at that point, you're kind of like, all right, well, that's why. But for the most part, you're welcome to email. I've had some really amazing emails come through when I've actually been the one that forgot to send the follow-up. I was like, oh crap, I'm supposed to do that like right now. Let me get that out. And we're all human. Employers are human. Not everyone's HR. Like for instance, I'm IT and I've been sending out interviews and I interview people and I talk with people and then I pass them to HR. But not everybody has the exact same training in how they're supposed to handle things. And then they also don't have the same priorities. Like if like I said, I work in cyber. If something blows up one week and I'm like, oh crap, I forgot to send out an interview. That's usually why. So lots of talking. Sorry, I talk a lot. Just cut me off.
No,
Hopefully that answered.
do not feel it. I'm going to pause and see if anybody wants to either type in a question in the chat that I can help moderate, or you can unmute yourselves if you want to ask something directly. And I'll be quiet for 30 seconds and then I have more questions if we don't have any from the audience.
I have a question. So you mentioned like sending the thank you note. And I've said a couple, but I guess I'm kind of maybe I want to know more about like how do you sell yourself in that thank you note? So you kind of mentioned like, okay, like yeah, I've said, oh, I enjoy talking to you, and thank you for taking your time. But how do you remind them about what you kind of brought to the table?
Absolutely. Great question. So thinking about your elevator pitch, take the buzzwords that you have in your elevator pitch and throw them in that paragraph about yourself. Because those are the things, A, are going to be the most memorable, are the buzzwords, because not everybody remembers all the little intricacies of a conversation. And then B, if we're searching for an email and I'm like, oh, I want to find the person who's really good at AWS, I'm going to like search for AWS and then that'll come up in the email subject. So don't forget, not necessarily don't forget, but don't be afraid to use buzzwords. The big thing is I would always start the email by proving that you remember the person you're talking to, because showing that you can make a definition between the different people you talk to, it proves more than you realize. Because I don't know how many times I've gotten something generic and I'm like, I know that was just an email, an email signature that they saved and they just dropped my name in the top. But make sure that you can write down something, whether it was, oh, that person worked in data. I loved hearing about your role in data or in data science. I loved hearing about how you manage your projects or whatever, just little pieces that you can remember about that interview. And I'm not saying spend the whole time getting to know the interviewer, but hearing about their experience does kind of help you learn a little bit more about what the company's like, because every company is going to be so different. And they might have different types of opportunities. And I don't know, people might handle things differently. So just proving that you listened enough to hear that shows that you can communicate effectively and take direction. And, it's all the little soft skills.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I have one. So if you're applying for like an IT position, but you don't really have coding, like technical skills, how do you make your resume or cover letter stand out? I feel like, I don't know, I just have a lot of soft skills and I feel like I don't stand out that well.
Well, I mean, once again, it's buzzwords. So half the time it's interest you have. The first thing I would say is certifications. Look at the titles of certifications. Even if you're not taking them and getting, going through all the hoops and paying all the money, look at what's important there, because as I mentioned, so many resumes are found because of buzzwords. So if, for instance, you may not be super technical, you don't code, but you really like the idea of cloud technology. And like you were like, oh, well, Amazon has all these awesome systems that people use. And half the time my job isn't coding. I'm not even gonna say half the time. I don't code. I don't code at all. I can do like HTML, CSS barely, and that's because of wonderful SILS classes I had. But I don't even read code on a day-to-day basis, and that's okay. I've had many roles where I've said, hey, I don't code, but I can manage people who do. I know how to, that's where your soft skills come in. Do you know how to help people communicate that technology side to the, and that always seems like such a silly thing because it sounds so abstract, like you have to translate the technology to the end user. But if I was to come in and say, hi, you've got a Windows 2008 SQL server that needs to be upgraded to a Windows 2016, everyone's gonna be like, I'm sorry, what? I don't do that. I'm a business person. I'm in finance. I don't get it. And then I'll come say, hi, your technology is obsolete. Do you have a technical lead who I can talk to? Or you need to move from this piece that I'm mentioning here, is highlighting or whatever, to this, and I can walk you through how to do that. But I'm not the one necessarily doing it. So it's technical communication or technical project management. And then there's also technical product management, where if you've actually made something like you've made an app or you've made a website or you've worked with a team to make something like that, and you had to think about, what does the end user need? Or what does my customer in this fake scenario need? Then you've gotten to manage a project. And so there's project management styles that are, you could probably look up, like, have you ever heard of like agile project management, which I know is pretty, and then there's like Scrum, which is like the buzzword for agile, or like anyway, you can look up a lot of the buzzwords online and do like a quick tutorial or watch a few YouTube videos. And then enough to where you could say like, have learned Scrum technology or have implemented. You don't have to put down the certification if you didn't get please don't put down a certification if you didn't get a certification. But so many of those things are extremely important because they are process oriented. And one thing I'll tell you is a lot of our developers don't understand the process at most companies. Like don't get me wrong, you get people who can do everything. And I love that. And that's amazing, but that's not always the case. So many times I will get somebody who's very technically oriented and they cannot figure out how to give a presentation to a leader. They don't know how to do a cost benefit analysis. They don't understand why I have to communicate differently to an executive than I do to an end user of an app. And it's just kind of understanding those little intricacies that, to me, it's always like, I don't know how you don't know this, because like it's natural for some of us that have the strong soft skills, but that's where you shine, is you get to come in and be that person. And so being able to pull in that information into a resume is usually, and I hate saying the term buzzword over and over, but that's what people are searching for. They want to see the acronyms they're looking for. They want to see the fancy certificate names, that you've even researched what it means. And then we all know that college students, you're not always going to have the technical expertise whenever you come out of school, because the technology is going to keep changing, and every company uses a different programming language and all that. But soft skills like this are transferable across all of that. So once again, sorry, I'm so wordy, but like I hope that was good and helpful.
No, that was really helpful. Thank you so much. And I actually have a meeting at 1:30, so I gotta go. But thank you for your time.
Of course.
I'll email you if I have any other questions.
Sure.
Thanks, Taylor.
Thank you. Bye.
Brittney, I had another question in terms of what do you consider the bare minimum of prep a candidate should do for an employer? I mean, I always say, if it's something you could find on the employer's website, you shouldn't ask, right? Where you're headquartered, how long you've been in business, what your tagline is of what kind of products you do. But what do you see from candidates in terms of that you would be like, oh, they've spent some time researching this organization?
So the first thing I would say is know what kind of company you're walking into. For instance, if you're going to a finance company, I don't know how many times out of 100 they're going to say, what's our stock price today? GE is not going to do that. We're not a finance company. But if you're going to a finance company, they care about their money. That's their thing. If you're going to a tech company, like if you're going over to Cisco or IBM over in RTP, and you say, oh, so what do you do? Oh, come on, don't do that. You're in IT. You should know what a tech company creates. GE is a little bit different. We're a conglomerate, and we're an ever-changing conglomerate, as an example for mine. So I walked into it on my interview and they were like, so what business do you want to be a part of? And the only thing I knew was what I read online and what business my interviewer was in. And I just said I wanted to be in his business because it made the most sense and it sounded like I knew what I was talking about. Because like, nobody expects you to know everything. I know that you're not going to know what IT systems we use. You're not going to know who our suppliers are. You're not going to know what companies we contract. Nobody expects that of you. We just want you to know like roughly what the company does in some capacity. And like in my example, knowing that we're a conglomerate, that's half the battle. Because I don't know how many times I'm at a event and we have GE Healthcare, which is wonderful because it sounds like we work in a hospital, but we don't. We build technology for a hospital. And I get so many like biology majors walk up to me and say, hi, I want to work in healthcare. And I'm like, I can't help you. I'm sorry. As kindly as I can, of course. And I'm probably a little bit less blunt with them. I'll probably still listen to their spiel, ask them if they've been in the business school or in information science or computer science as well. And half the time they say, no, I just want to work in healthcare. And I'm like, okay. So just kind of understanding what you're looking for. And a lot of times, like Lori said, you can find that either on the website. You could search a Wikipedia page for most of these companies. I don't expect people to know me. Like, you don't really need to know your recruiter or your interviewer. That's something that you're better off asking questions during the conversation. But for the company itself, just roughly know what kind of company it is, and maybe if they're known for something, or maybe they've been in the news lately for something really good. It's really easy just to search their name and then hit the news button on Google just to see what comes up. If it's bad, please don't bring it up. But if it's good, please do. Hopefully that's enough. It's not, you don't have to go too deep.
Great, thank you. So I have more questions, but I don't want to step on anybody's toes. If you have something else that came up, feel free to jump in. Okay, so I'm gonna keep going. One of my questions that I wanted to ask Brittney is that you have been in the position of being a recruiter. So when we have some of these alumni panels, we can get great insight from alums who are working in wonderful roles and what they do on a day-to-day basis. And anything you can share from that end would be fantastic. But the reason you're our host today is because of your recruiting things. And so I think it's very valuable for students to hear what recruiters are looking for. And so sounds like 90% of it is these soft skills. Now, I'm personally on a vendetta to eliminate soft skills as a phrase because I don't like the word soft with it. So I know I alone am not going to be able to just take out soft skills out of the vocabulary, but it is amazing how, especially our BSIS community, we have the ability, our students have the ability to understand the problem and then also to communicate about it, and then also, you know, work with others to get the solution out there. So when you're looking at these interpersonal skills, what we've talked about communication style, we've talked about the researching the company. Without the confident handshake and the direct eye contact, what are some other things that you would want a student to share? So not to like hide. Sometimes our students are amazing and they'll be like, oh, I don't want to brag. And I'm like, no, this is your brag time. You're supposed to be doing that. So what are some out of class, either class projects or out of class examples that you hear at fairs that you light up about because you know from your analysis that that makes a good candidate?
Yeah, thank you. So I guess that question could go in like so many different ways. And they're all good. So probably one of the big things is if you are passionate about something, whether it's a class project, whether it's something that you did outside of school, whether it's a club you're a part of, something you just do in your free time, do you have an Etsy shop, random stuff like that. Don't be afraid to bring that up. I know it's niche. I know it might be something that might be a little bit, maybe not the same thing, but whenever you think about it, every single person that works for any company, they're all humans. So they have hobbies outside of work too. So that being said, that may not be the thing that gets you the job all the time. If it's not something that, you know, maybe that's not what they're looking for that day. Maybe you're too, you know, you're excited about something that's not what the company needs, which isn't a fault of yours. It's just maybe the company doesn't need that right now. But I'll never be afraid to talk about the things that you love and you're excited about, and seeing that passion come through your eyes shows that you're engaged, you're excited, you're happy to be here. You're not afraid to let the company know who you are so that the recruiter also feels comfortable letting you know more about the company. Because so many times if you are, and this is never a fault to people that are actually very, very introverted and kind of, it's just hard to get to know you. And that I mean it in the best way, because it's not a fault, but if it's hard to know something about you that like sticks in my head, you're just another resume. And that sounds horrible and harsh because that's not the way like personally I feel. But whenever I'm sitting at my, like I think last year I was the only one that made it to the UNC recruiting fair. So I was by myself. And by the time 4 o'clock rolled around, I had somebody walk up at 4:03 asking if they could ask questions, and I had the worst headache. I was ready to just like pack it up and leave, but you got to like put on your cheerleader face and go. Recruiters get tired too. We're human. We want to be excited. We want you to be excited. We want to know that you're here because you enjoy talking to us and not just because you're trying to check a box off of a list. So being able to explain your interest, and especially it's kind of a plus if your interests are like, man, I've kicked up my own server in my house, and you know, in an IT position, that's wonderful. I'm not saying that's the only, of course, hobby that people jump onto, but I like, for instance, my neighbors literally next door, they're both retired GE engineers, which I found out after I moved here, and they've got a woodworking workshop behind the house. That's why they picked the house. Like, these are people that have things that they're excited about. So if your recruiter, whether it's me or somebody else, can relate to you on some level, and sometimes that's that thing you're excited about, as well as your background, which is your interpersonal skills and your technical ability, and so many other things. And then the other thing is, you all have an information science, I assume, background, unless you're in like the MSLS. And for a lot of people in this degree, they also have computer background. They might have a business background. They might have an econ. Finance, you might even have like one of the humanities as your background. And heck, I mean, I think my teammate who also went to UNC was an English major before she went and got her MBA. Now we're on the same team doing the exact same thing. So we can learn a lot about you through your major and your resume, and that's all fine and good, but that doesn't tell us who you are. It just tells us what your sheet looks like and what you've studied, which some people enjoy what they study, some people don't. But if we can see it in your eyes that you're excited about something, we know that you could be excited about one of our projects too. Sorry, circular conversation there, but that's the big thing.
It's all related, right? I mean, we want people to feel very confident about their resume because that's what they talk about. We want people to feel comfortable in their elevator pitch because that's their first impression. I feel like it's not the first time I've heard recruiters say they would love to see when people's eyes light up because that's something that they care about. I'm old enough to remember that I used to have to tell people, like, let's not put glamour shots on your resumes, which nowadays people don't even remember glamour shots, but there's very little inappropriateness you could put on people are usually aware of whatever. So I don't think people are going to bring up like, I enjoy killing bunnies, on set. Like, don't bring that up, right? But there's a ton of stuff that is appropriate to bring up with your hobbies and interests outside of your coursework and things like that. So thank you. I appreciate you bringing all of that up because I do think the human nature part factors in, right? And so to be memorable and to stand out in a positive way is the goal. So I think that's all great. Those were my questions that I knew I wanted to ask. I'll pause again to make sure if there's anything else that comes up.
I'm an open book, really, though.
I have another question.
Sure.
Okay, so I guess this is pertaining to like LinkedIn versus resume. And I think that in terms of my LinkedIn profile, I tend to just put my resume onto my LinkedIn profile. And I don't know if that's like, if there's supposed to be a difference, and also like how much time should I really be spending on my LinkedIn versus my resume?
That's a really good question. So both of them, I would say, are living, breathing documents in some way. The big difference is on a resume, you've got one piece of paper. On a LinkedIn, you can add descriptions, you can add keywords, you can make yourself searchable. I know if you've taken any of the SEO classes, you can make it easier to find you. That's kind of your little Google page right there. If you want somebody to find you, put it on LinkedIn. I use my LinkedIn for more than just trying to find opportunities. I also use it to find groups that I'm interested in or learn new things about my industry. So it's hard to think about whenever you've got other more fun social media to compare to. Like, it's no Instagram, it's definitely not TikTok, but it is a good way to learn more about what's happening in your world. So as I've learned, and this, gosh, it makes me feel, it dates me a little bit, but whenever I think about the people that I connected to whenever I was in college, or the people that I connected to when I first started at GE, and I look at what they're doing now, I realize because I've made connections with random, managers that I had, I think I'm connections with like 3 CIOs for major companies because they left the company and then got promoted somewhere. Like, that's how you kind of build that network, is getting to know those people by talking to them or doing a project with them, or I don't know, saying, hey, can we get coffee? Even whenever they're still just like, it's easier to talk to them. They're not that high level yet, but they're going to have their own lives and careers. And now you realize, okay, well, my opportunities multiply because of it. So your resume is so valuable, and I'm never going to turn that. I'm not great at updating my resume because how often do you have to after, you stop kind of going everywhere. But every, 6 months or so, I've got it on my calendar that says, go add new certifications, go add new projects, go, if your title changed, go put it in there, because you need to be ready, like, to go. If someone comes and taps you on the shoulder and says, hey, you'd be really good for this position, submit your resume. And I just want to have it ready, that kind of thing. So I would say do both. I wouldn't neglect either, but I would say with LinkedIn, you get to be a little bit more you than with your resume. And you can still find ways to like express yourself on your resume, of course. Like, I think one of our interns had like grilled cheese aficionado or something on hers, and she thought it was hilarious. She was like, I know it was a risk, but I thought it was funny. And evidently somebody else liked it too. But nowadays I'm like, oh yeah, she's the one who had grilled cheese on her resume. But it's a matter of kind of your comfort level with that kind of thing. But with LinkedIn, you get a little bit more freedom. And plus, like, I would never probably put some of the organizations I was a part of when I was in college on my current resume, because think about it, they were 5 years ago. Whereas I might leave them on my LinkedIn so that if people who are currently in that position can find me, or people who are currently part of that organization can go and say, oh, well, Brittney, she's on the list. So it's more of like your history and your future is all kind of your current history and your future, whereas your resume is just kind of going to be your most recent accomplishments and highlights. And I don't know, they're both valuable in different ways.
I totally agree. Your resume is like a snapshot today, but it doesn't necessarily, bring both sides. I think the other thing about the LinkedIn part is that it gives you that space in the profile section, and that can be a great written equivalent of your elevator pitch. And that's another place for these buzzwords to get scanned when people are going through LinkedIn, where I don't really feel like new professionals need a summary statement on their resume. So I think that's kind of a waste of space on a resume to have a paragraph about I'm looking for a job. But on your LinkedIn, it kind of fits more with that lifespan scope. And then
you can always use a cover letter whenever you submit any of your resumes. Most places allow you to submit a spot for it. I've actually had a few resumes submitted where when it allowed them to submit more than one page, they saved their cover letter for the specific one for my company and the resume as one document, and they uploaded all of it as if it was their resume. And then I had no choice but to look at their cover letter and be like, oh, they put their cover letter in here. So I'm not saying every company is going to like that, but at least, and I've noticed there's a ton of companies now that, like, I've had friends that have been job searching and they say, oh yeah, now you just kind of throw in your resume and it auto populates everything. So you can kind of figure it out based on the tool you're applying into. I know, like, our system's a little bit more dated because our company's so big and we have to have all these rules for all the different countries, but we'll like have you upload your resume and then we'll have you upload the data pretty much again, which I always hated, but it's harder when you're global than whenever you're like based in your small company and you can be agile and jump into things like that. Right. So it varies a little bit, but I'd recommend save any of that for a cover letter, and you could also put it on LinkedIn.
Great point. Well, now I am out of my questions. So if we don't have any other questions, I want to take the opportunity to thank Brittney for presenting today. We really appreciate it. When I came to SILS 100 years ago, I was hopeful that eventually I would have students who were then wonderful alumni who would come back and pay it forward and help the next generation. So Brittney's a great example of that. So thank you for spending your time today with us.
I appreciate it. And I do have a shameless plug for anybody interested.
Yes,
so
please.
I will not be able to attend the GE Career Fair this year, unfortunately, but we do have a resume drop open for our internship. It's our digital technology internship. I typically go in and steal resumes from the Carolinas to try and hire you out in Greenville, where I sit. So that you're not too far from home, but it is it's global opportunity, but it is a nationwide opportunity. And this last summer it was remote, but it's still a really cool thing to put on your resume, and you get put into amazing projects where you get to feel like part of the team. They don't give you busy work. I think sometimes I had interns that I was like, man, their projects are cooler than mine. So it's a good spot to be in, but it's our digital technology intern. So if you go to ge.com/careers, it's just called digital technology intern. The location will say Boston. That's not the case. That's just where our headquarters is. That's an opportunity that's anywhere. And I know Lori mentioned that you all can email me any questions. I don't know if you shared my email out, but you all are welcome.
I haven't yet, but okay.
You're also welcome to find me on LinkedIn. Whatever works for you. If you need my GE email, I'll share that one as well. Feel free to send me questions about really anything we talked about, or if you've got questions about the GE opportunity, I would love to tell you more because I really enjoy bringing SILS and UNC students in. My boss knows it too. He's like, because there's two of us, like I said, they're on the same team. They both went to UNC. And he's like, you two and your UNC people. So he knows. But the opportunities, typically I try to shoot for anything in the cloud space, anything in the security space, and anything that has to do with machine learning, which I know is a fun buzzword, but we've got a whole team on it in Greenville, which is cool. So please reach out.
How many people are in your Greenville location? Well, I guess you're all
Greenville site.
home now.
We are in this whenever, I guess, well, yeah, when we're in the office, which hopefully by next summer we will be, right?
Right, right.
It is about 4,000 people at my site, and we are the largest gas turbine manufacturing plant in the world in Greenville. It's really funny. We sit like right on top of an oil pipeline. I think that's why they did it here. But it's a manufacturing site, but we have a pretty cool IT presence. It's an older site, but we try to all get together for happy hours. I think there's like 50, maybe a little bit more IT people here.
Nice.
But it's also a beautiful city if you've never visited. Our downtown is built around a waterfall. So
I
all
have
the shameless plugs.
I have friends that worked at Furman, so I've been to Greenville and I've seen that waterfall. It is very pretty. Lovely, lovely downtown.
So all the shameless plugs, reach out to me.
Yes.
Thank you so
No,
much.
that's great because I know that we have a long history of proud SILS alums at GE, and so we want to keep that going. So a lot of times people will be like, oh, I never considered GE. So it's nice to hear somebody that is so on top of the latest technology doing well at GE. I think that's good for students to hear.